go with the flow here.
Well, my flight got in on time. I was home, of course. I got back to Minnesota 5 minutes early, even. No lightning storms. So, yes, I was welcomed to Florida with a lightning storm
You were.
last week.
Yeah,
And hey, we brought the storm to downtown on Saturday night, didn't we?
we did. We danced our little booties off. Yeah, St. Pete, thanks
We did some
for
dancing.
showing us a good time.
As promised, right, as promised. But it was just it was fun. It was good to meet your neighbors and
Yes. I know
yay.
you're an official Bahama Mama here of our neighborhood, and we welcomed you with a fun night out. That was super awesome, and it was so great for us to spend time together and work on some things that we have in the works, which is super exciting, and also just to get some fun, just that one-on-one time. Everything we do is remote, so now we have a chance to. It's nice to when we're in person with each other, sharing ideas. Whatever happens, it's all good. We
Mhm.
got some
Yeah.
photos together.
We
That was super cute. We had fun with the camera.
we did. I think, yeah, that's what everyone listening needs to know is that I think Kylie and I are capable of having fun with the camera, and that's
Yeah.
about it. It's not
Yeah.
tell us to pose and act professional is a challenge for us. So yeah, I think Instagram is not our strong suit just because we are honestly just trying to have a good time with this and bring good information and have some creation and some things to offer quite soon as a result of this.
Yeah. Our
Having,
time together.
yeah, exactly. And being inspired by each other in person so that we can come back here and think of new things to come up with, which is what we will be doing today. We have a lot of tips for you today on a really interesting topic that came my direction. And I knew that Kylie had a whole bunch of experience in this. So I figured,
Mm.
well, let me pull a study and introduce this topic of food noise, what it is, where it's coming from, and what things that we can do as a result, like strategies for actually dealing with food noise, because it's not an easy one way street on this one.
No, I mean, we've been discussing breaking this article down. It's a great term. As soon as I heard it, I was like, wait, what is this? What is food noise? I need to know more, especially because it's so great when you have a definition for something that's going on in your body or in your mind or in your, something that you're experiencing. Sometimes just having that definition of something that you're experiencing can actually make it more approachable, right? It's like when you don't know what's happening, it's dark, it feels scary, it's overwhelming, you don't want to talk about it. No, somebody else is seeing this. Well, when you started explaining what food noise is, the lights were just going off in my mind because I thought, oh, yes, this is exactly what so many of my clients have told me about. Some people will come up with their own definitions of that. But food noise to me, just that definition made so much sense. So I'm going to, I want you to explain it, especially because this is something that you found and came across. And I think it's a really great topic tying into your work as a dietitian, as a diabetes educator, probably really ties into we were even discussing life with type 1 diabetes. People living with type 1 are experiencing a lot of, food is a constant thought in your world. And I know that from even, from being married to somebody living with type 1 diabetes. So, I think that this concept, for those of you listening, you are going to be in for a really interesting journey here because I think it's something that we can all relate to on some level. And, I have my own thoughts on this too, but maybe you could just give us a little bit more of a
Mhm.
background, a little deep dive and like sort of the definition of food noise and as you've learned it to, be described.
Yeah, why I texted you and I was like, "Can we talk about food noise?" And you just were
Yes,
like, "Yep, okay, now tell me what the heck this is." And it came to my
exactly.
doorstep, and I think if anyone else just hears the word and it resonates with you with like, "Oh my gosh," like I totally can imagine what that is. It's my own way of thinking about food, and really it is. It's not a clinical diagnosis. It's an experience. It's an experience that is unique to the person and how you think about food and what your relationship with food is like. So, I'm not going to say it's your relationship specifically with dessert. It's overall your relationship to how you view eating and food and nutrition. So here's where this really brings us together in a larger scale is there's a thought that I had. So certainly in type 1 diabetes we are trained to basically constantly think about food and make good decisions because of food, but it's not always easy to make good decisions with food and then to feel like you have to be responsible for every single one of those decisions, which makes you feel like you have to be perfect, quote unquote, and perfection, and then not being perfect or doing something that makes you feel guilty or gives you shame, you can see the spiral just happening, right? But now I'm also thinking in terms of just women in general, this constant world of body awareness and body and shape awareness that we are in, we can try to tell ourselves healthy at every size no matter what. Like, I love my shape. We can do that to ourselves like crazy, but it doesn't mean that sometimes social media gets to us. That sometimes we see something, even if it's like AI generated, and we're like, I don't look like that, that there can actually be something going on in the background with the shoulds. Like, I should choose differently about food. I should think differently about food, or it ended up being a whole bunch of guilt today because of something you ate yesterday. Even if anyone else looking at you would say, you eat fine, you're okay, you're doing fine. But we put that on ourselves. And then on the other side of that is, you now, as a grown woman, have other people who you're responsible for. You're responsible for their eating. It's either a partner or it's your kids. So there are differences here in what food noise could be and how you feel about food itself. And what we're going to get into in the context of a study that I found is that there's a way to kind of look at what is called food cue reactivity, which is an internal, like, emotions, like an internal feeling. I'm hungry. I have emotions about food, and then the external cues that trigger food related thoughts. Like, I see cake and I didn't want it before I saw it, and now I see it and I want it so bad that I can't think about anything other than that. So, cravings and behaviors. And there's a way to kind of look at food cue reactivity, measure it a bit. And that's what this study was looking at. Can we explore the concept of food noise within the framework of food cue reactivity to come up with solutions of some sort? So, living with type 1 diabetes, constantly thinking about food, being someone responsible for other people's food, or realizing you have just a tricky relationship with food in itself, and you have intrusive thoughts about food. Like, if I see the Starbucks drive through, I know I'm going to hit it, and I'm going to go for that Frappuccino, and I'm going to be like 60 grams of added sugar later, and I'm going to say, to hell with it. Now my diet's shot. That means tomorrow I'm going to eat whatever I want. It's going to be a full on 24-hour cheat day. So, mentally, a lot of us are in a pretty sticky place with food, and not just diabetes, but I mean, like, think about insulin resistance, right, Kylie? Like, in this world of polycystic ovarian syndrome, of anyone living with obesity, of people trying to just like age healthy, you can have these intrusive thoughts. And now what we can think of as food noise for lots of different reasons.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I love that we're getting into the emotional contexts around food, because from my own personal experience with food over the years to my own coaching practice, working with so many people who were looking to reverse insulin resistance, looking to lose weight, reduce inflammation. I mean, I've just seen and heard so many people struggling with this exact concept. And it's beyond struggling. I mean, really battling themselves out of certain food choices. And while I can't say I've necessarily experienced to that degree when it comes to, like, I feel like I've always, for whatever reason, that's one thing I've been able to hold boundaries around in a lot of ways. But I can relate to anxiety, and I can relate to, thinking about food, and especially when I became a plant-based eater, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, well, what am I going to make for myself? And how am I going to prepare foods differently? I was changing the way that I had been making foods for so long. And that started bringing up more of those ruminating thoughts of, okay, well, do I have enough of this in the house? Am I prepared with enough fresh foods? Do I have enough fruit to make smoothies? And that's kind of translated into now, as a mom, taking care of a child and, preparing food for our family, keeping track of what's in the house, right? Is there enough variety of food? Is there enough range of food? And so I feel like for those moms out there that are like balancing all of these things in your life, or anybody, not necessarily even a mom, but if you're taking care of somebody, if you're the food preparer, you might also have this food noise to some degree. And maybe it's not as, I think maybe the difference is that, and this is something that we were sort of teasing out, before we even started recording now, but is the idea that these are, you know, if you're aware of it and you're aware that you have thoughts about food on a regular basis, that's a great first start, really, emotionally speaking. It's a very good place to start. But if these thoughts are persistent and intrusive to the point where it now influences your health outcomes, right? If you're somebody who has been, struggling with weight management, if you're somebody who's had any type of disordered eating, if you're somebody who has been diagnosed with things like type 2 diabetes or, other health conditions that could be related, hypertension could be related to your actual body weight. Then we're getting into a territory of if the emotional trigger is there and the food noise comes up and it's causing these health outcomes that are things that you're not happy about. Well, then, where do we go from there? And how do we emotionally address these triggers and the emotions behind it but without, in a healthy way, in a positive way?
That's something to remember as we talk about this study is how do we serve the emotional side of what this food noise is? Because the reason why this is becoming an important topic to talk about is because of the reporting that people are doing as a result of taking a glucagon-like peptide. So the GLP is far and wide at this point. Certainly, if you're listening to us on this podcast, you're probably in the health space and you've heard of a GLP-1 before. And these GLP-1s that are being provided to people who want to lose weight, they are reporting back their experiences on a GLP-1 in various ways. And one of them is a report of feeling that food noise is reduced for them. So these are folks who want to lose weight. They want to be able to improve their A1C. They're trying to lower their risk of other health conditions as a result of having type 2 diabetes for the most part. So, if patients are reporting a reduction in food noise, they're reporting that they feel like they're having less obsessive thoughts, less preoccupation with food when using these medications. Now, what we know about these medications is that they reduce portion sizes. They reduce the urge for hunger. They tend to reduce someone's desire to eat as often as perhaps they once were without us having a specific person sitting in front of us and saying, this person was eating 16 times a day and now they're eating 3 meals a day as a result of the GLP-1. That could be happening. We don't know. It's the way that people are reporting that the GLP-1 is changing their behavior. But what is interesting about this is the study itself is looking at, well, if someone's losing weight, they're on this GLP-1, there's a reduction in food noise. How could we actually measure this? And that's what the food cue reactivity is, and helping us to understand the cue is an internal or external stimulus related to food. That is like a loaded statement, like internals and externals. That's going to lead to the solutions that we are going to give when it comes to lifestyle strategies. Also, the influencer. So, factors that modify how a cue is processed. That could be our mood. That could be stress. That can be physiological state itself of wanting to eat. And then reactivity, the immediate psychological or physiologic response to a cue. So, a cue that, like Kylie and I have come across time and time and time again is it's pain, it's
Mm,
emotional pain.
mhm.
It's emotional struggle that comes from something very deeply rooted in a person, whether they tell us what that is or not. But what this scale is telling us is that the way I read this is a GLP-1 isn't magically removing the trigger. It's not going to erase the memory of the thing that you're using food to treat the so-called problem with. The
Mm.
problem is that you're hurting and now you're choosing something that's really sugary potentially to take your mind off the thing that hurts you the most. So emotional eating is a real thing. So I think that like this really hits Kylie and I because yes, you've taken a GLP-1 and maybe you've lost 40 pounds or more and you're starting to approach that goal weight that you want to maintain. Now we've got some real things to think about because it is a very, very serious recommendation across the board that if you are going to be prescribed a GLP-1 and take it consistently, that you must also engage in the lifestyle factors that are going to address the root of the problem. But if you have never gotten to face what the root of your choices is, what is that thing? It will not go away just because you're taking a GLP.
Yeah, I mean, that emotional trigger, for some people, it shows up as shame, worthlessness, guilt, the stress of a fight with a partner or a loved one, the feelings of being abandoned in a way, and, on some emotional level. These are real, deeply rooted, like, this is kind of that, like, trauma that's out there in the world today, that's talking about healing this childhood trauma or somewhere along the line that a lot of people have turned to food to feel better, to fill themselves, to fill that pain, fill that void of a loss or pain that they're experiencing. Because as we know, foods that are high in salt, sugar, and fats, the SOS, right? Salt, oil, sugar, these are dopamine producing foods. These foods trigger your dopamine centers the same way that heroin does. So if you're getting your fix of feel good medicine from food constantly and your level of dopamine production is very, very high because you're eating salt, sugar, oil based foods, or especially the worst is like the combination of all three of those things, then all of a sudden, if you, so basically that's creating that sensation of the loss of pain, right? The food is actually working in that way. So there's a strong physiological explanation for why we crave those salty, sugary, oily foods. And we've referred to them in the past, but the pleasure trap is one of the best things that you can read if any of this seems to be relating. And we'll put the link into that because that's just such a great explanation of why we fall into that pleasure trap, and it is emotionally rooted to begin with. Those triggers come from that emotional trauma or pain, right? Like you were saying.
Mhm.
And so,
Mhm.
to your point, these drugs, the results of this medication isn't to treat that trauma, but what it's doing is it's pausing or suspending those that noise around the trauma.
Mhm. You can imagine how loud that noise would be too, because if you've been treating it with those foods for 20 years or some very long amount of time because you've been battling with your weight for a long time, and you can pretty much timestamp when you started battling with your weight, and it will be around that time that you started to deal with some emotional pain that you didn't have another solution for if we started to eat. We started to eat too much when we were kids because of something that was difficult to process, and we're still having a hard time processing it as adults, and now we're taking a GLP-1 that somehow quiets the noise. It would be so hard to go into that dark space, but the only way to take action against that thing that happened to you is to face it, is to actually look at that trigger and go, my health is suffering because of that thing that happened to me. And the way I look at it is, certainly there's layers of therapy here that come with being ready for that. But I look at it as that is the only way you're going to take control of the situation that took your power from you. If that is what actually happened, it was a time that you lost your power, was not yours. That's what trauma is. It's something taken from you, most likely. And we lean into food. It's the simplest, easiest, and mindless way to work through a struggle. But now you're getting to the point where you're thinking about reducing your GLP-1. What are you going to do without it?
Yeah, that's really what the big question that we were leading up to is that, okay, fine, we know we've got emotional experiences that could be leading to us to make these types of food choices, right? Emotional eating is real. We know that. This food noise is real. We know that. It's reported over and over and over again. Okay, so now to your point, you're taking the GLP-1, it's working. You're on Ozempic, you're on Trulicity. They're working. You're losing weight for the first time maybe in your adult life, and you're feeling really great and confident, and all of a sudden the doctor says, okay, well, this medication is working, so we're going to start weaning you off of it, right? Which is exactly what's supposed to happen. These drugs are not designed for long-term use. In fact, that's very, very clearly written in on the information sheets. Like these are not drugs for long-term use because the side effects can be significantly severe if overused. So we also have to be clear that like these drugs are designed to be a temporary aid. And so when the time comes that your weight loss has progressed, you're now ready to come off of that medication, well, that doesn't mean that that noise, right? The food noise is going to be in fact, it's likely that the food noise is going to come back with a vengeance. And that's where the cycle of potential future weight gain could come into play. And that's the thing, just like Lauren mentioned earlier, it is part of the strategy to also integrate the lifestyle changes while you're taking these medications so that when the medication comes off, you have a tool belt ready to go where you can turn down that noise yourself. And you can say, you know what? Maybe you decide to do some work with a therapist and you work on some of those emotional struggles that you've had. Maybe you just learn some new tools around food. You learn how to hold barriers or boundaries around the food choices. These are skills you can learn how to do, and so that you're not eating mindlessly, right? Like you mentioned earlier, learning how to eat a little bit more with a little bit more mindfulness in place. Maybe learning how to shop differently, right? That's a lifestyle strategy. How do I shop differently so I fill my pantry with the foods that are going to help me heal and help me gain my strength and my wellness? Maybe we avoid the snack food aisles. Maybe we just shop in the produce aisles for a while, right? So there's strategies and tools. And as a coach myself, I've worked with so many people to help them overcome these challenges. Some of them were on medication, some were not. And so it is possible to learn a whole new set of tools. And that's where the lifestyle strategies come into play, right? It's not
Mhm.
saying, okay, this doesn't exist anymore. Well, no, actually, maybe the struggle still is there, but maybe you have a new set of tools to work with so that you're not feeding that, you're not responding to those triggers the same way.
Mhm.
And that's where the
Mhm.
real work comes in. And that's
Totally.
can be really hard. It's,
Mhm.
not an easy feat necessarily.
Like, the study gives us all this great information about how to kind of identify what's going on with food noise, like the cue, the influencer, and then the reactivity, and then there's the outcome. And the outcome is that long-term effect. It's like weight gain and then this emotional response and other side effects that could be happening as a result of having put on too much weight from constantly falling for the cue itself. So, how do we retrain ourselves to then react differently? Because the cues, I mean, it's kind of like saying, I'm just going to put myself in a bubble now and nothing is ever going to bother me. And I'm never going to, we can't shut off the world. I have seen clients make incredibly powerful choices though. Typically they revolve around retirement, getting away from a job, moving away from something, big life changes like divorce. Huge life changes can really force someone to turn into, I have to pay attention to me differently now because I want to live my life differently. If you're not in a position to do that, what have you got left? Well, get intuitive, get deep, 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 and really, really intuitive to think, what are the cues here? My emotional cue, the thing that is triggering me. How can I have a bit more of control over the way I react to this? And I know it's not fun to say, just go for a walk when you feel like you want to reach for the M&Ms, but truly you have to sit in it for a minute. And I love the word sit in the pain. When you are something is just bothering you so much, is don't react, but sit with it for a minute. And not
Mhm.
everybody reacts by going to food. Not everybody does that. We realize that. But if you do end up running to the pantry or you're looking for the drive in or all you can think about is how to treat that feeling with something pleasurable being food, sit with it. Like truly sit with that thing because time is one thing that you need. But the other thing is to really assess the situation and say, how can I work with this differently? Because it has to stop. I have to
Mhm.
work through this. I have to work past this. Do you need help? Do you need a professional to be able to talk to you? Do you need a line? Pick up the phone and call in real quick because there's a whole bunch of resources out there now when you're having a trigger moment mentally and emotionally to be able to phone in, say, please, therapist on the other end of this line, coach, help me to not go and buy the fun size, the whole bag of fun size, you know,
Yeah.
Hershey Kisses or whatever. Yeah, it's a thing. And the reason why we can give examples like this is because Kylie and I have either, I'm speaking, experienced it myself, or we've helped people work through these moments. And it's not overnight. This is not a turn the music off. This is turn it down. We can't shut this music off. That we can't completely shut this food noise off, but we can help you turn it down, but you have to take your power back. You have to put this in your hands just a bit too.
It reminds me, my good friend Adam said, who we are very lucky to we'll be interviewing him at some point for the podcast. His thing is always, um, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's exactly like when you were talking, I was like, that's exactly what it made me think of because, um, when we're comfortable with the discomfort, that's where we can start to actually see change happening. You can Just be present with it, allow it to happen. It's such a, our emotions can really take control and take charge over our lives in a lot of ways. And as somebody who myself, I've dealt with my fair share of anxiety and even bouts of depression over the years, I can say like it can be a really challenging place to get out of, to get yourself out of, to break that cycle. You're right. Working with a therapist, even if you're wanting to make change in your life in any way, our brains don't like it when we change our mind. This is like our brains are really wired to comfort and convenience. So if you're on autopilot and autopilot, right? Autopilot mode. So if you're somebody who hits that drive through on the way home from work every day, you might, and that's just part of your automation, it may be really hard to drive that same route for a while if you're choosing not to go into that drive through. And maybe it requires taking a different route, take a different direction, do something different. Like you said, take a walk, break that cycle. Now, these are some of the things that we're talking about here, are some of the lifestyle suggestions, right? Of learning how to unlearn some of that some of the responses or the reactivity, which is your immediate choice, right? And I think this topic, I mean, I could talk about this type of thing all day. And again, I sort of go back to the beginning. I love that there's a name for this. I love
Mhm.
that there's a name for it because I really believe we can all relate to it on some level. And so wherever you are with that idea of food noise, what is that? How much is it playing a role in your life? And if it's playing a really big role where it's, possibly making, leading you to choices that are not serving you in your best interest, then maybe it is time for that coach or for somebody to call a friend, phone a friend,
Mhm.
say, I
Yeah.
need some help with this.
Yeah, and it's not you trying to identify if you're binge eating or not. Like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a binger, I'm binging." It's don't give yourself a label if you recall having a moment with a food that you are not happy about. This is the headspace. This is trying to recognize that you have something going on in your thoughts that are very intrusive related to nutrition that is affecting your health outcomes. That is something that is so seriously needs to be addressed. And it's another huge flaw in our first line intervention strategy with nutrition, with primary care doctors that are never going to ask you the questions that get down to the stuff that you actually need to be paying attention to. It's going to be here's the medication, see you in 6 months. It is our job to be able to identify here's where I'm really actually having a problem. This is my greatest barrier. Most people's greatest barriers are lifestyle related. I don't know anyone whose barrier is to actually swallow a pill. The actually swallowing of the pill is not typically the barrier. The barrier is almost always time related. And that's what's actually quite encouraging for people like what Kylie and I do and taking assessment of what people are going through is we hear people saying that they want to exercise, that they want to move past the food issues that they struggle with, but they're having a hard time figuring out how to do it or seeing clearly how to get through all of the things in life that have gotten foggy along the way. So within the noise, the food noise, we're trying to clear this space out a little bit, but the first step is the person acknowledging that you've got it and that this is coming to play a lot and it is affecting your choices and changing choices is hard to just like redirect. I'm going to take another route. It's a breakup. You're breaking up with something that you've gotten comfortable with for a long time. How many of us have stayed with a partner for too long, trying to figure out the words, trying to like find a way to get away from that situation? So that's why this is such a great thing to talk about because it's awareness and then trying to figure out how you want to deal with it and then moving onward with it. Now, we had a number of lifestyle strategies that we're talking about here, and one of them we have to bring up is optimizing the diet. Optimizing your diet within this process too is a really helpful way to try to cut through that noise. So, yeah, you're ready for the breakup, but what are you going to choose instead? And there's two pathways with a GLP-1, in my opinion. It's the path of you don't have the appetite, so you're just eating less of what you were to begin with, which is exactly the problematic foods to begin with. Or you are now looking at the lifestyle strategies that reduce insulin resistance and chronic disease, and you're making those changes that you can stick with forever.
Mhm.
That's what we're looking for is the long-term solution. So the optimization is another way to cut down food noise. There you go.
I mean, all the strategies right there. Optimize what goes in, Make it food that is gonna serve you and health and in your health and your short-term and long-term health. I mean, that is such a great number 1 strategy right there. And then number 2, you know, when you start putting those foods in your body, the non-processed, non-refined foods, when you start eating from the more whole foods and really cleaning up those additives and the things that are added into so many refined and processed foods. You may find yourself just feeling a little bit better. And when you feel better, maybe you'll feel like doing a little more exercise and moving your body more and walking and getting some fresh air and some vitamin D. And then maybe you're going to start naturally reducing some of that food noise as a result of nourishing your body and also feeling better in general. Again, if you're not as emotionally triggered, if you're not feeling if you have more capacity to hold yourself because you're feeling better, then maybe that noise won't be as loud. You're again just going to be softening it a little bit. And maybe through that softening, you have the opportunity to make different choices as well. I just think that's like so much of what I've seen over the years with my own clients, the people I've worked with. The more space you have to make different choices, the better you feel ends up meaning that you're going to have more space to make those choices, right? That help you feel better. So you make choices that help you make you feel better. It's like a one choice begets the next, right? And that cycle keeps going.
Well, that is mind fleeting, right? Like, that's the practice of mind fleeting. It's way easier said than done. But what you're talking about is how you set yourself up to be mindful. You set yourself up to be mindful. You don't just pull it out of thin air.
Yeah,
That's
right.
that's the trickiest thing is, you know what? I'm in the middle of a freak out. I'm going to just go ahead and go through the 5 steps of how I can avoid this. Like, it could be too late at that point, right? Like, you're gonna treat this mood, the reaction here, in a way that you're going to regret later. And we can talk about that next too, because we don't want people living in that for very long. Is we tend to feel regret, we tend to feel remorse, we tend to feel shame. Food has its effect on us, but I like how you're thinking about how this can be a strategy for people on a different pages when it comes to thinking about food. Like you mentioned in the very beginning, it may not be food noise to feel like you have to be constantly prepared with food, but feeling prepared can cut down on anxiety about having the right decisions in front of the people that you care about or yourself. And it's the same deal when you're dealing with food noise and you know that you have a past that you've been dealing with this for so long and not been able to get that monster out of your head. Because if now you're learning the tools within the lifestyle strategies, certainly within plant-based nutrition, that you have more whole foods in your house. And in fact, I tell you what, I use the word permission so much with the people I work with. I was like, you need to give yourself permission to eat potatoes, truly. And I'm not talking about McDonald's French fries. I'm talking about the potato. Boil them, that's a huge thing in diabetes, is terrifying. Being terrified of potatoes is giving yourself permission because these foods will help fill you up because of the nutritional density. And that's the big one with improving your diet is tends to be nutritional density, more vitamins, more minerals, happier biome, thinking clearly, get that feedback loop going. I think of it as that type of nutrition, it accidentally heals the things that you don't even know that you needed healing times.
Yeah,
As for
it just
me,
comes along for the ride, right? It's like, well, look at that. That
mm,
feels bad, right. Yeah, it's so true. I love that. I love the permission, like give yourself permission to get into the foods that are going to be nourishing for your body. That's really important. And especially again with the high vitamin and nutrient density, that if you are somebody who is in the process of losing weight, there's a lot of shifting happening around your cells. And if you're reducing inflammation, there's a lot of movement happening to like exit out the more, the excess byproducts of all that cellular breakdown. And we're going to get into that in a whole other episode. However, what I can say is the more nutrients that you're putting in, the vitamins and minerals, the antioxidants, all those things are going to help in cellular repair. So, our bodies are just working our cells in our bodies are just constantly working. And so if you're squeezing them by, you're reducing your weight and maybe inflammation, you're also in a process of releasing certain parts of that cellular process. And so filling that back up and giving your body the nutrients that it benefits from to do all those processes well is just a win-win. It's like an extra bonus. Like you're saying, it's the accidental thing that comes along for the ride. So, you know,
and that is another reason to be really honest with yourself or with anyone that you know that might be taking a GLP-1, because I'm pretty sure you can't, like, kick a rock without knowing someone that is taking a GLP-1, is that if you know someone that is taking it and they're having success or they're struggling with a side effect perhaps, but they're talking to you about it, is this is the opportune time to bring up, if it's okay for you to have this conversation with them, certainly, is the quality of their nutrition. 'Cause that GLP-1 that's in there in your body affecting the feedback loop of your appetite and your hormones telling you that you're hungry, they're not fixing you on a cellular level. They are not going to the GLP-1 is not gonna swoop in and heal your metabolism. The only thing that is going to really reverse any kind of insulin resistance that you're dealing with, or that's going to help repair on the cellular level, is going to be the nutrition. So if you continue to have pizza every single day and you haven't had a vegetable in 10 days, you're going to put weight on when you're done with that GLP-1. I can just tell you right now. Sorry to be kind of the bearer of bad news, but every single study will make this very clear as well. Is that weight gain is so fast after stopping to take a GLP-1. But what did people do with their nutrition? The nutrition is what's going to overcome this at the end of the day. So if the GLP-1 is bridging you into a place of encouragement, hey, I'm down 40 pounds. It's been 6 months. Like, finally, I got this ball rolling. Well, you gotta get that nutrition on board. You have to engage in all of the things that we know kick diabetes in the face, regardless of the GLP-1. It's walking after meals, and that's good for everybody no matter what, no matter who you are, what conditions you're dealing with, is getting moving, but eating those plants that are going to help repair things at the cellular level, GLP-1 or not. At the end of the day, that is where we're going to land. Food noise or not.
Mhm. Oof.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everywhere, you
Yeah.
said it's these drugs and so we are here to encourage anybody who is using one of these medications, who's been prescribed one of these medications, to just remind you that in case you didn't read the package insert, that it is recommended that you are also modifying your lifestyle in some way to make room for this to be a truly long-term, life-changing. So, we want to help you get there. That's what we're really here to help inform, help motivate, and help you learn the strategies. um, you know, keep in touch with us. We'd love to coach you if you're interested in that. If you need those tools, what we'll do with this episode is we'll post a little summary of the article and some of the strategies that we were talking about in the show notes. And we'll definitely post a link to this article plus a reminder of the pleasure trap. I'll post a link to that as well, because that book, I just think that should be on everybody's bookshelf. Like, we should all read that book just because it's something about the brain, understanding how your brain works and the wiring of your brain. These aren't things that we were taught in elementary school, right? Imagine if we'd been taught that instead of, I don't know, whatever subjects we were learning, your
I know,
least
right?
favorite
Well,
subject in
it's
elementary
another
school.
one of those, like, stages of decision making, right? Like, actionable steps is maybe you read a book, maybe you listened to a podcast. Our blog about this article is going to be shareable to anyone who may, right, who may need to have some understanding of, like, well,
Yeah.
okay, food noise is a thing. I'm on a GLP-1. I feel like there's been a reduction of this, but ooh, I'm going to need to develop some tools here to be able to actually help myself, because I'm not working through this. I'm just jumping over that hurdle and trying to lose weight, but weight loss isn't a cure to anything. It helps,
Yeah.
but the hard
Yeah.
work is what is going to do it for you.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, when you're working with a coach, it's fun, hard work. At least you have fun. I mean, I do.
A
I have a
check
great time
in.
with my clients.
Yeah.
I have a great time. I love working with people on this. It's so inspiring. It's fun. We have fun. We laugh. Sometimes we cry. We get into the emotional parts of things. But,
Hmm.
the reality is that working with somebody as a support person in your life as a coach is can be incredibly beneficial in your process. And, you're not expected to have all the answers, but if you need that help, these people like us exist, right? So that's the good news, that there's help out there. So we're
Yep. You
happy
can join
to.
the club, the Green Glow Club on Facebook. Green Glow,
Yeah.
you can find us.
Yeah.
And if everyone needs a little story about how much Kylie loves talking to people, oh, we were in this park and the beach was gorgeous. And I'm like, I'm putting my feet in that water and I'm making a beeline for it. And we get to the water, and there's one park bench and one person on this whole stretch of the beach. And I turn around, and Kylie is fully engaged in conversation with this person. They are both moving their hands within minutes as I am staring into the water and I'm off on some other journey of my own. And Kylie has got like all the things on the table with this person. But what I didn't realize is she had a cat in a harness sitting next to her on the park bench. So Kylie's like, "Well, I just saw the cat and I had to go over there and make best friends." It's amazing to see what Kylie can do with just one person in sight. She's gonna meet you. She's gonna find out the things that she needs to find out.
Did. I found out a lot. She just was yeah. We were
Right.
we were exchanging numbers by the end of that little exchange, weren't
It was
we?
close. It reminds me exactly of what my dad does in retirement, like going in the grocery store and he knows people he went to high school with. My mom is so embarrassed she's running the other way. I'm not embarrassed, but my dad's just this butterfly talking, talking, talking. And so anyway, every time I'm with Kylie in person, I learn new things about, oh, you know what? We're gonna be here for a minute.
It's so true. Well, I think I shared with you then too that I did get voted most talkative in my junior high yearbook, and I am a chatty girl. I can go on. It's so funny that you like totally called me out on that too, because it's really true. It's part of me. It's just
I said there was one person in sight. How did you do that? Yeah, it was great. But
I
I
love
I think it's just another reason why I like St. Petersburg because you can kind of just walk up to somebody and be like, "What's your
totally.
story? Give me all the dirt. Give me the
Tell me everything.
details."
I wanna
And
know
you
it
get
all.
them.
I mean, it is an environment that I'm thriving in St. Petersburg, and I think it's because the people are just so friendly and everyone's outside, so there's just, like, people around all the time, and I mean, my goodness, I mean, you think I always feel like it's not as bad as like, if you think I'm bad, you should see Cyrus. He would have been talking to the fish in the water. I mean, he gets next level with people, and so the 2 of
Yeah.
us together are just dangerous, so watch out if if you don't wanna get into it with us, just turn the other way.
Yeah, you can come into the water with me, and
In the water with
we
Lauren.
don't have to say a word. We can just like that's what Indigo did. We could just hold hands and walk down the beach
You guys just
and
were I
stare
know
at the
you guys were
fish.
having a great time in your little beach walk. It was very cute. She enjoyed having you here. We all did. It was a great time. I'm glad
Thanks,
we got that
guys.
time together. We did not record a live episode, but we got photos, and that's what matters.
We
So,
did a whole lot of other things.
yeah. I
But,
mean,
yeah, and okay, and now we know what to do next time. So we're
oh,
revved
yes,
up. We have an
exactly.
energy boost,
We sure do.
and we'll be back
Next
again.
Yeah, and next week we're gonna be back in the green room. A very special interview we'll be featuring next week, so stay tuned for our, exciting things that we have up ahead.
Our green room is gonna be popping because
It
we've got
is.
a few things scheduled for the green room
Really
coming
exciting
up.
things for
So,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for hanging with us, everybody. In the beginning, we were too excited to jump in. We didn't even say, "Hello, welcome to Green Glow." So this is gonna be more of our outro than our intro.
Welcome to Green Glow. Thanks for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sharing. We are certainly super grateful for every single one of you, and we hope you'll tune in for the next episode. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.